Many people have started to do their record predictions for the upcoming season, and there are a lot of people out there who think that the Tennessee Titans will miss the postseason this year. Last year, the Titans finished with a 12-5 record. They had the number one overall seed in the AFC, and they were sent packing by the Cincinnati Bengals in the divisional round of the postseason. However, I think that despite this team losing a couple of key pieces on the offensive side of the football, such as star wide receiver A.J. Brown. They also got rid of a couple of offensive linemen. I think many people are selling this team short. Last year, I didn't view the Titans as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I felt they would win the division, they would make it to the playoffs, but I didn't really see them having much success in the postseason. However, going into this year, many people are just automatically counting out this team because of what they lost. And I haven't really heard too many people talk about what they brought in to replace their losses. At wide receiver, yeah, you trade away star wideout A.J. Brown to Philadelphia, but not too many people have mentioned the acquisition of wide receiver Robert Woods, who they acquired in a trade with the LA Rams. Woods tore his ACL last season, but he should be ready to go come the start of training camp. And I expect him to have a really productive year with Tennessee. Robert Woods is one of the more consistent wide receivers in the game, and I think that he's going to be a very good mentor and another good piece to put alongside of rookie wide receiver Treylon Burks, who they selected in the first round of this past year's NFL draft. Then, not to mention, this team was without their heart and soul, Derrick Henry. And despite the fact that they had to go the majority of the regular year without their biggest piece on offense, they still were able to come away with the number one overall seed in this conference. And that's a testament to how good of a coaching staff that Tennessee has. Mike Vrabel did a fantastic job with this team. We talk about all of the injuries that teams like New Orleans and the Baltimore Ravens had to deal with. Tennessee was rotating guys in and out on the offensive line. They had injuries at wide receiver. And despite that, they were still able to be a really good football team. And I'm not ready to count out Tennessee just yet. I'm not saying that they're going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoffs. However, I do think that too many people are just writing off the Titans. I'm not ready to give the AFC South division to the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts have just as many things to prove as the Tennessee Titans. As a matter of fact, I still think that Tennessee is a better football team than Indianapolis. The Colts are also a football team that doesn't have a lot of depth or talent at wide receiver outside of Michael Pittman. Then you have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. Yeah, you get rid of Carson Wentz and bring in Matt Ryan, but Carson Wentz wasn't as bad as what many people make him out to be. As a matter of fact, the guy threw 27 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions. Yes, he was reckless at times, and it did cost Indianapolis in the end. But overall, I think that Tennessee and the Colts are pretty much on the same level when it comes to talent. It's just all about who's going to better perform this year. And then something else that we have to bring up is the fact that when you look at the Tennessee Titans, with the fact that Derrick Henry is coming back, many people harp on the offensive line not being all that good. They parted ways with Roger Saffold and David Quessenberry. However, the guys that they currently have, left tackle Taylor Lewan is still one of the best offensive tackles in the game. You re-signed center Ben Jones to a 2-year deal worth $14 million. Yeah, he's 32 years old, but he's still really productive. Right guard Nate Davis is a pretty good run blocker. Left guard and right tackle definitely are the biggest concerns that many people have about the Titans going into training camp and whatnot. But the strength of this team is the run game. It's going to be the run blocking. this isn't really a team that's built to throw the football 30, 40 times a game. And there were certain instances where they needed Ryan Tannehill to step up and carry the load, where they didn't necessarily have the talent around him to do that. You got to remember, last year, Tennessee was rotating guys in and out of the starting lineup when it came to their offensive line. So it was hard to develop good chemistry, good communication. You got to remember that the offensive line simply isn't a unit where you can just plug and play anybody. You have to develop chemistry. You have to develop good communication and understanding with one another. And for Tennessee, going into this year, they have some young guys like Dylan Runditz, who should be expected to start at right tackle. He has a lot of upside. They drafted him in the second round of the 2021 NFL draft out of North Dakota State. So, I mean, yeah, this offense did lose some talent. You did lose Brown to Philadelphia. Julio Jones didn't really do much last year. So this team, I don't think, got all that worse as many people in the media try to make it out to be. And for Tennessee and Indianapolis, one of these teams are going to make it into the playoffs. It's not going to be both. The AFC is just way too stacked to have two teams from the AFC South representing the division. And I think most likely, if I was a betting man at the moment, I would still put my money on Tennessee. Tennessee defensively is really good. Really good. And Indianapolis has a really good defense also, but this is the same Colts team that lost their defensive coordinator and Matt Eberflus, who is currently the defensive coordinator of the head coach of the Chicago Bears, He formerly was their DC last year. Tennessee still has a lot of key pieces on the defensive side of football. You have defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons, who happens to be one of the best interior defensive linemen that we have in the game. You have edge rusher Harold Landry, who is coming off a career high of 12 sacks last year. Bud Dupree only had 3 sacks, but he wasn't all that healthy. Can he be able to stay on the field this go around? You have Caleb Farley, who only played in 3 games before suffering a season-ending knee injury. Christian Fulton really had a fantastic 2021 campaign. 12 interceptions, 14 pass deflections. He could end up having a breakout year where he may end up being a Pro Bowler. Rookie cornerback out of Auburn, Roger McCreary, was one of the more underrated cornerback prospects coming out of this past year's draft class. You have slot corner Elijah Molden, who can do a variety of things. You can play him in the slot. You can play him as a hybrid safety in certain packages. Then at safety, you have Kevin Byard, one of the best safeties in the league, and safety Amani Hooker. This is a really fantastic defense. And although I do have my reservations about the linebacker play, this defense should still be a top 12 unit, potentially top 10 unit at best. So the defense is still going to be there. The question is, offensively, how much production are you going to get out of your wide receiver position? We know Robert Woods is going to be consistent, but we don't really know too much about Treylon Burks. Titans fans are hoping that Treylon Burks ends up filling in that role and the replacement of A.J. Brown, but however, he's still trying to work some things out when it comes to conditioning. He's still not in the best shape, but when you look at this team, I'm really having a hard time trying to figure out why so many people are counting out Tennessee. This is a resilient football team. This is a football team that fights in almost every single game that they play in. There are many games where Tennessee was down and they found a way to crawl back in. And let's not forget, Tennessee still had one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL, despite Derrick Henry missing the majority of the regular season. We also have to take that into account. With the heart and soul of their team coming back and King Henry, Tennessee is not a team that you can just strictly judge off talent, okay? Because too many people look at the stats and they look at the numbers, and you're going to look at the Pro Football Focus grades and you're going to say, well, JT, this offensive line doesn't look great. Well, when it comes to pass blocking, yeah, but that's not how this team was built. This team was built to run the football, and that's what Tennessee is going to do. And as long as Derrick Henry stays healthy, they're still going to be really good at doing that. And the schedule, you can say, well, JT, they have a tough schedule. They had a tough schedule last year. They still had the number 1 overall seed. despite how many injuries they had to deal with. So I'm not saying that Tennessee is going to miss the playoffs. I'm also not going to say that they're going to make it. I am saying, however, that I think they have a better shot at making it than what many people are giving them credit for. And like I mentioned earlier, they still would be my pick at the moment to win the AFC South, because I still feel this team is a lot better than the Indianapolis Colts, who also have a couple of issues that they have to work out on both ends of the football. Corner, you brought in Stephon Gilmore, but who's going to end up being their number two? Kenny Moore right now, who is their nickelback, one of the best slot corners in the league, is currently sitting out. He's not participating in OTAs. We don't know what's going to happen with him and his contract dispute or whatnot. So for Indianapolis, yes, I do like what they've done bringing in Matt Ryan, even though he may not be as talented at this stage of his career as Carson Wentz. He's going to be a little bit more conservative with the football. You're not going to have as many mistakes, and your team is going to be run through Jonathan Taylor. However, when you look at the Tennessee Titans, this is a coaching staff that has proven that they can do more with less, and I'm always somebody who is in favor of people who are able to do a lot more despite not having a lot of great pieces around them. And I think too many people, when you do these record predictions, they do it solely based off the roster. They don't go off the coaching. They don't really dig into who the offensive line coach is. They really are just judging teams based off the depth chart. You really have to dive in further. You have to look at what head coaches are able to elevate the players on their team. That's something that when you look at their head coach, he does a very good job at. Mike Vrabel gets the most out of every single player that he has on his team, and that was evident last year. And to think that Tennessee is falling off, I think it's kind of disrespectful. It really is. Now, where they rank in terms of the AFC hierarchy, I don't think many people are having them in that Super Bowl conversation compared to the talks last offseason going in, where there were a good amount of Super Bowl conversations surrounding the Tennessee Titans. However, going into this year, I think too many people are selling this team short, and it's a good example of how quickly people can switch on you. You get what I'm saying? This is a Titans team that, yes, they lost some pieces, but they also did a good job of replacing what they lost. And for me personally, I know I sound a little bit like a hypocrite saying that I'm not trying to say they're not going to make it or they are, but I pretty much said that I think they will because I still picked them to win the AFC South. And Colts fans may get upset with that, but defensively, this is a really good team. I really love the Tennessee Titans roster on the defense side of football. This is a team that's going to put the ball on the ground with Derrick Henry. They're going to control the clock. Their defense is going to get stops. They're going to keep you and your offense off the field. And when your offense does get on the field, you're going to have a very tough time moving the ball on them. I still feel as if Tennessee is the team to beat. However, if Tennessee does not win this division, they're going to be in a lot of trouble because the AFC has so many great teams this year. I mean, you look at the AFC North, 3 teams could get in. You could have Pittsburgh, the Browns, the Ravens, the Bengals. One of those 4 teams are not going to get in. And all 4 of those teams, you look at them right now, those are playoff caliber football teams. The AFC West, the Raiders, who surprised everybody making it to the postseason last year. You have the Broncos with Russell Wilson. You have the Chargers, who made a lot of improvements this offseason. Kansas City, still can't count them out. So let alone, you're already going to have 2 divisions who potentially could have 3 teams in. Now, of course, not all those teams are going to get in. Somebody's going to end up not being able to live up to those high expectations. However, when you look at the AFC South, if Tennessee doesn't win this division, they're probably not going to get in. Maybe they could find a way to backdoor their way into the 6 or 7 seed, but it's going to be really tough. So their division matchups are going to be really critical. And this division did get slightly better, bringing in Doug Peterson as the head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not saying that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be in that discussion for winning the division. We still know it's going to come down to the Titans and the Colts. However, it is worth noting that this is a Jaguars team with a better coaching staff. They're going to have this team a little bit better prepared. And as we saw with Indianapolis, when they got smacked in the mouth and had their playoff hopes derailed by Jacksonville, I'm just saying, don't count out the Jaguars. They could be a team who could steal a game from you. And it could be at the moment where you least expect it. So for Tennessee, if they don't win this division, I don't think they make it into the playoffs. But I have a very high level of confidence in the Titans and head coach Mike Vrabel that they're going to be able to win this division. And we already know if you win the division, you're automatically guaranteed a spot in the postseason. However, if you don't, things become incredibly difficult. But you guys let me know down in the comment section down below how you guys feel about the Tennessee Titans' chances of being able to make it into the postseason this year.